Massive fuss in the internet, crazy posting about the US and Venezuela situation happening today, January 3rd, 2026. Super, super unexpected to be so early. Not that it would be unexpected that the US would actually follow through with its military actions. I actually, talked about this about a couple of weeks ago, that it would be very interesting to see how this conflict would dive into 2026. That definitely things were escalated, but I was kind of surprised to see it so fast implemented, the whole operation to capture Maduro today at 2 a.m. in Caracas. And despite, this excitement and happiness of, finally putting down an authoritarian leader and narco-trafficking leader and criminal for sure. I don't think this is put up for speculation anywhere. I don't think, regardless of your political views, that there's any doubt that Nicolas Maduro has been, for years involved in this kind of activity in the hemisphere. So this is crossing, frontiers, going into other countries, and it has been so since he's been in office. And there was a judge in New York that in 2020 indicted him for his crimes. Nobody did anything about it. Things kept pushing hard into the United States, and the escalation of narco trafficking activities, it's not something that is put into question. This is known, and this is known evidence and known facts. Now, that is the first thing and that I'd like to point out. And of course, when we think about Venezuela and the people of Venezuela, I think it's been very evident and very clear that the country itself, people are happy and relieved in the streets. Just having some Venezuelan friends, I can definitely say and can definitely feel their sense of relief of putting down this massive repressor in their country. So there's obviously, and it's very visible, the sign of relief in these people's faces, and hope that things can now be different in Venezuela. Now, that is one thing. Going to the other aspect of this, it's another leader in another country invading a sovereign country to hunt down a leader. We need to be very careful, that this legally, in international charters, international regulations, if the U.S. actually have legal grounds to go and invade a country in their capital, attack a nation like this, and get their leader in prison and take them into U.S. territories. So that's the part that people are just forgetting about, if this is something that countries can actually do now, because Maduro was involved and was indicted in international crime and through international legal authorities. So we have to be careful to analyze this to see if the U.S. had the right legally in international law to perform such an action. Now, whether this is good or not good for Venezuela, I'm not even going to question it. Of course, if this guy is really, held accountable and put into jail and we're done with, the Maduro era, I have no question that this is good for Venezuela as a whole. I think people will slowly get their liberties back. We hope for a stronger economy and people being free to actually operate and work. Of course, I see all positive points. However, when I see a leader of another country, much more powerful, like the United States, and Trump coming up and saying, we're going to be managing and we're going to be taking over and in control in this transition period, that is something that we should all be watching. you're seeing a very powerful nation coming into another country and saying that they will be in charge in this transition period without us knowing for how long, how this transition period is going to be. And we all know that just, this is favoring a lot of U.S. companies to go into Venezuela, install themselves, and make a lot of money in the Venezuelan territory. We all know it's no secret to anyone about the massive oil reserves in the middle belt of Venezuela. Now, I heard even there's speculation about 2 trillion barrels of oil. Now, there's a lot of money to be made there. The U.S. is not making this move out of nothing. And that's the part that scares me. It's because there is this massive economic interest that for sure will be favoring the U.S. economy. So like everything, there's always two sides. Of course, if these American companies are going to go into Venezuela to reconstruct, to rebuild the country, of course, that means jobs, that means a stronger economy, that means opportunity for and better ways and means of life for the Venezuelans now that they might be able to reconstruct their lives. That is a good side, that is positive. But nobody's stupid, and we should not forget that these American companies are going to make huge profits out of this. Chevron is already there. It controls 25% of the extraction of Venezuelan oil, and that's only going to get, more accentuated. So President Trump kind of outlined that they're going to be there doing this transition and, going to be rebuilding the economy for the Venezuelans, as if this management of all this oil is all going to be, supervised by the Americans, but it will be for the Venezuelans, which I highly doubt that. I think there are massive business interests in this whole move. So a lot of things to separate here. Yes, it was a good thing. A world dictator, manipulator, drug trafficker is put into jail, is put down. That is great. That's captured. But we can't forget about this massive move of the United States to be going to another country and operating in this country however it wants. So there has to be some system of checks and balances. Things needs to be given back to the Venezuelan people, that this is still Venezuela. It's a sovereign country. Venezuelans should be the ones who have to take all the advantage of whatever, outcome, whatever reconstruction and economy that is rebuilt in the country. So I think the international community, world leaders, other countries do need to put a lot of pressure on how this transition period is going to move and how the whole management of rebuilding and reinstalling another leader in Venezuela is going to go by.